Redeem Academy. Yo, what is up, Science Squirrels? Johnny here. This is Redeem Academy. I'm here to help you make the most of your education while giving God the glory he deserves. We're just past the middle of my introductory unit on biology called What is Biology? And today's topic is a big one, evolution. If you don't have a notebook, you can get one at my website, redeemacademy.org. Big question today. What can we learn from Darwin and Lyell about how easy it is to drift from God when we stop seeing him as the foundation of truth? So we're going to be talking about two guys today, Darwin and Lyell, and they're both named Charles. And you may have heard of Charles Darwin, evil Charles Darwin, so evil. But he actually has a really good idea that he added to science as well that you're going to learn about today. Before we get into evolution today, I actually want to bring back to your memory historical science and empirical science. I have a little clip I want to show you about that. Okay, this is from a debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye the Science Guy that probably happened, let's look, 11 years ago. Ken Ham calls out Bill Nye on basically smashing the two together when they are not the same thing.
Apparently, people with these deeply held religious beliefs, they embrace that whole literal interpretation of the Bible as written in English as a worldview.
I gotta show you this. I will also take the Greek, Bill Nye.
They accept aspirin, antibiotic drugs, airplanes, but they're able to hold these two worldviews. And this is a mystery.
Okay, so Bill Nye's complaining that, hey, Christians take aspirin, so they need to believe that we evolved from a puddle and turned into humans. This is called conflating, all right? That's probably a word I didn't learn until I was probably like 35. To conflate two things that are not the same is to put them together. He just conflated evolution with empirical science, but evolution is a historical science. So watch Ken Ham pull them back apart for the audience.
I suggest to you it's not a mystery. You see, when I'm talking about antibiotics, aspirin, smoke detectors, jet planes, that's Ken Ham, the observational science bloke. I'm an Australian. We call guys blokes, okay? But when you're talking about creation in thousands of years or the age of the Earth, that's Ken Ham, the historical science bloke. I'm willing to admit that. Now, when Bill Nye's talking about aspirin, antibiotics, jet planes, smoke detectors, he does a great job at that. I used to enjoy watching him on TV too. That's Bill Nye, the observational science guy. But when he's talking about evolution in millions of years, I'm challenging him that that's Bill Nye, the historical science guy. And I challenge the evolutionists to admit the belief aspects of their particular worldview.
Boom, nailed it. The one is empirical science, the other is historical science. Almost should be called philosophy. Today, as we're talking about evolution, just realize that we are not dealing in the world of observations. We are dealing in the world of inferences. Remember this thing, the inference cube? Okay? And inferences built on inferences, built on inferences, where you never get to really test the inferences and do an experiment that would like prove whether or not this really works. We need to have lower levels of confidence about those things. Now with that in mind, the first guy that we're going to be talking about is Charles Lyell. Let's add some color to him. All right, now notice what his little quote bubble says. Geologists must therefore abandon the ancient doctrine, which means teaching, that all layers of the earth were formed by a single universal flood. What he's talking about there is Noah's flood. He's talking about people before him believed that all of the layers of the earth, you can see these really well like at the Grand Canyon. Here's a picture of me and my wife at the Grand Canyon. We went on a family vacation a few years ago. You can see she tried to push me in. It was very dangerous. She's a very scary woman. But in the background, behind that incredibly handsome man, you can see all these layers to the stones and like different colors. And then as you get closer to the top, these are just different colors even. This is a redder stone. This is a whiter stone. This is another cool shot of one of my kids. You can just see all these different layers of the earth. Okay, so here's a better like cartoon diagram of the Grand Canyon. So you can see there's all these different layers of rock in there that people have mapped out. People before Charles Lyell, how did they explain all these layers to the earth? They said they were formed during Noah's flood. There was a global flood that formed all these layers. Here's how Ken Ham says it.
If there really was a global flood, what would you expect to find? Exactly what you see in the fossil record.
Billions of dead things buried in rock layers laid down by water all over the earth.
He's got this famous line, millions of dead things buried in rock layers, laid down by water all over the earth. And so that's how young Earth creationists have explained the fossil record, the geologic record, all the layers of the earth since Lyell's time. So before Lyell, there were these people called catastrophists, which are basically young Earth creationists. You can think of them as the same. And so let's go label catastrophism. All right, so here's catastrophism. Let's add some color to catastrophism. In that word catastrophism, do you hear another word that maybe you actually have heard before? Penguin? No, wait, no. Catastrophe. That's the word. Okay.
Okay.
Catastrophism is the idea that catastrophes like earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, tsunamis, mudslides have shaped most of the geologic record to explain all those layers. So I'm going to show you this video now from this channel Genesis Apologetics, and subscribe. Check him out. This video is amazing. It's got 3 million views. He's pretty good YouTube channel too. I've never really looked at him, but I subscribed when I saw this video because he did such a good job on this video. So go watch this entire video if this is all interesting to you. He starts off, and I'll let the video play here in a second here, but he starts off, and this is aerial footage from the Answers in Genesis Museum of the Flood, of Noah's Flood, that they built. And I mean, look at this thing. They built a life-size Noah's Ark, and they gave it a really cool shark fin on top. Awesome. Dude, I wish I had a shark fin like that.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. These two events, the fountains of the great deep breaking up and the windows of heaven opening, began the first day of a 371-day-long calamity that resurfaced the earth and killed everything that moved on land.
Did you know that? Did you know Noah's flood was over a year?
Hot magma mixed with steam pierced the Earth's crust. Giant rifts or tears ran thousands of miles across the planet. Scalding hot magma vaporized massive amounts of water that jetted into the atmosphere. The water fell back to Earth as in...
Okay, so one of the questions, where'd all the water come from? They've got mid-ocean ridges opening up, vaporizing water and creating tons of steam that comes back as rain.
Hence global rain, along with torrential rain from heaven for 40 days. Worldwide catastrophic rifting caused massive mud-filled tsunamis to speed across deep ocean floors, then onto shallow ocean floors, killing everything in their path. The first mega sequence wipes out mostly shallow marine habitats. The bursting...
Okay, I gotta go back to this. So every time he shows you a picture like this is the United States, and it's got tons of yellow all over it, that's one layer of deposits that has been mapped out in the United States. And there are deposits that go from Alaska to Mexico of just a single layer of debris that was laid all over that's now deep underground, you know, a mile underground, and you can see it in the Grand Canyon, you can find it in Alaska, you can find it in Mexico.
The bursting fountains of the Great Deep spew out megatons of magma and carbon dioxide. Sure enough, the first megasequence rocks show a spike in volcanic activity and massive amounts of carbon dioxide. During these first 40 days,
this is a cool image. Look at this. So these mid-ocean ridges are splitting open, water's being vaporized like crazy. It's not like the whole earth floods all at once. It's like slowly there are waves of tsunamis and debris that are continuing to wash and wash and wash and cover the planet.
Currents overtopped most of the flooded continents. Water-laden sediment travels at highway speeds. Thick sediment blankets start covering low regions of the continent.
All right, did you catch that? So this line is a wave of water coming toward land.
Thick sediment blankets start covering low regions of the continent. Fossils show that the first 3 megasequences buried the shallow seas that were filled with marine life, as these deposits have almost no trees or land animals. All 3 megasequences covered similar environments across North and South America and Africa, the 3 continents mapped so far.
All right, so all this stuff that's blue in this map is from the same layers of sediments coming and laying down all over these continents. So how do you explain that? You explain that by a global flood. Another thing to take into account is that creationists today believe the plates moved rapidly. A lot of people talk about Pangea. This might be the first time you've ever heard of it, but if you've ever looked at South America and Africa. And you might have thought as a kid, did those ever fit together? People think that they did. And so that landmass where everything was together is called Pangea.
One global cause, Noah's flood, best explains this one worldwide effect. Then by the 40th day of the flood, the Absorica megasequence began hitting. The maps show that this is when things got much worse. Something shoves the water over the tops of even the high lands from that ancient world. The newly forming ocean floor offshore is so hot that it starts.
Okay, this is super nerdy and cool. So this, I don't know, this is BBC, this is in his thing, but this is probably showing, in time-lapse what people who believe in slow processes believe, but they're just speeding it up for the video. It's perfect for what young Earth creationists believe. I think young Earth creationists think the plates moved at like 5 miles an hour during the flood. And so young Earth creationists think these plates are moving really fast, relatively speaking, 5 miles an hour, and are subducting under other plates. And so this is a rapid resurfacing of the Earth that happens, and these plates go under the other plate, and that's why you get like this ridge up here of a bunch of volcanoes and stuff, which is kind of where I live in the Pacific Northwest. We have this sort of thing. So this video goes on to show how more flooding eventually covers the whole Earth, but it takes some time and the plates move as the flooding happens. And so he's got some really good animations of all this stuff. I don't know where this guy got all these cool animations. And then he shows how tsunamis, such a good animation. But he shows how tsunamis bring debris, and then he talks about how the way that the tsunamis bring the debris in different waves could explain how you get different zones in the fossil record. And so in this diagram, you've got the lowest level of fossils, and then you've got some higher level fossils, and then you get some higher level fossils, and you get up to modern day. It kind of gives a better explanation. Like some people would think, well, the fossil record should be, if there was a global flood, it should be like a washing machine. You just throw everything in, it all gets mixed up evenly, and it comes out totally mixed. So you should find the oldest fossils with the youngest fossils all the time in a totally equal mixture. But they provide an explanation where it's more about what ecosystem you live in. So things that live at the bottom of the ocean get fossilized first, and things that live higher up that can run away from tsunamis are going to get fossilized last. So they provide an alternative explanation for why there are different layers of fossils in the geologic record. Cool. Hey, so that's young Earth creationism, kind of the geology side of it. You can check out, they have a great ministry in America called Answers in Genesis. There's other ministries out there that spend a lot of time just going into tons of detail on this stuff. This is Answers in Genesis website. They have a link you click and get answers. You can read all kinds of articles about anything you have a question about. Really interesting perspective on how to interpret Genesis. Now back to what we're talking about today. Charles Lyell, he drifts away from this kind of perspective. He drifts away from catastrophism, that major events occasionally shape the fossil record, and he moves more toward a much more gradual idea that things are extremely slow with really long periods of time. So here's a quick clip of a couple guys discussing Lyell and really just showing a quick animation of how he thought with a little bit of good narration about it.
Lyell saw sedimentary processes now, and he saw how much sediment accumulated in a given time, and he realized just how much sediment there was if you piled all the geological successions that were known one on top of another. And you could do a crude estimate of how old the world was, and you would immediately go into millions, which is what Darwin needed in terms of time for animal evolution and plant evolution to occur.
So these guys in this documentary, and every history of science guy you talk to, it's not going to be there's spiritual forces driving Lyell. It's going to be, it was just the evidence. He was just an objective science robot, and the evidence led him. And I would say as Christians, we need to think more critically than that. Jesus talked about the devil as the ruler of this world. Paul talked a lot about spiritual forces in operation. Like the world is a tremendously spiritual place. It's not just a world of science. It's a world of science and it's a world of the spiritual. And so to pretend like Lyell's just blindly following the evidence wherever it leads, no, Lyell's a man with a soul, with eternal destiny. What he does is going to impact the eternal destiny of others. And Satan isn't just sitting back and doing nothing with his time waiting for Jesus to return. Satan is actively involved in the world to the point where Jesus calls him the ruler of this world. So you can't just treat humans like objective science robots that follow the evidence wherever it leads, especially when it has major effects on the culture and the shifts and the trends of society. And so I see a major spiritual shift in these guys where they're saying, hey, these old scientists, from 15, 16, 1700s, they were totally, God and science were together. For us, we're going to get rid of those ancient doctrines, and we're going to be science robots that just follow the science wherever it leads. I don't think so. But in order to do science the way he wanted to, totally naturally without God involved in any way, Charles Lyell provided a new explanation for how you could get lots of layers, and it required lots of time. Get ready for the biggest word you've ever written in your life. Uniform. Oh, that's a nice word. Uniformitarianism. So that was that image we just watched where Lyell says these layers were slowly laid down over millions of years. So the Grand Canyon, in Lyell's view, it's not ripped out by post-flood activity, ripping a gorge out of the earth. It's formed by the Colorado River, slowly eroding year after year after year. And just a little bit of erosion, 5 millimeters of sediment is eroded every year for 300 million years. Or whatever we see today in the present happening, so just a little bit of erosion every year, is the key to explaining the past. That's uniformitarianism. It's a very uniform process. All right, so let's write some words down here about Charles Lyell. Okay, he is a geologist. He studied geology, which is the study of the earth and its composition. His idea was called uniformitarianism. Oh, I almost fit it. And that's 17 letters. The geological principle that the planet's surface was shaped by sudden powerful events that Lyell rejected is called catastrophism. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I just spent like an hour explaining that to the camera. Somehow I gotta chop that down to like 10 minutes. It's gonna be tough.
Prepare for battle!
All right, so now we're moving on to Darwin. Charles Darwin. There's the man. Let's add some color to Darwin. Let me say first, I did not put Darwin's body on that monkey, okay? His contemporaries, the people of his time did that. All right, see, here's a picture from his time. Because he proposes a theory of evolution, and he proposed that humans came from monkeys, people are gonna make fun of you, bro. Okay, and that's what happened. Here's another one, okay? Hey, personally, I liked monkeys. When I was a kid, the movie Aladdin was in, and I really wanted a little monkey like that monkey from Aladdin, okay? So, Darwin, bro, monkeys are cool. It's all right. So what happens with Darwin is heavily influenced by Lyell. And so Darwin is literally reading Lyell's books while he's on a journey. The journey of the Beagle, which is not a little dog he was riding, but it's actually a boat that he was traveling in. I got a cartoon that'll pick us up there. All right, so here we are. Darwin's theories. Here we go.
1835, the Galapagos Islands.
Hey, remember that place I told you about?
Young English naturalist Charles Darwin
Look, he still had hair.
collects animal and plant specimens for study.
So cool.
His observation.
Oh, look at our cool creatures. There's a marine iguana, or maybe that's a marine iguana, because they also have a land iguana. Okay. Look in the background, Galapagos tortoise, penguins.
On these islands will be fundamental in formulating his theories, which many years later
One thing I didn't tell you about are the finches. Stop interrupting the video, Johnny.
will be published in his great work on the origin of species. A revolutionary book that changed the way biology was understood, giving rise to new scientific theories.
Kind of like a Bible for atheists. A little different.
In this book, Darwin laid down the scientific principle that each species had not always been the way we know it today. Rather, each one had changed and altered over time.
Okay, it becomes a little more believable once you see the three things in between, huh? Remember that picture I showed you of the motorcycle and how it turned into a pickup truck? Same idea. All right, so we'll get back to that cartoon in a second. But young Charles Darwin gets on a boat and he travels to the Galapagos Islands and he's got all these crazy ideas in his mind. And he thought he was gonna be a doctor and then he would throw up and pass out, so he couldn't be a doctor. So he's studying science, and his dad, I think, wanted him to be a pastor, but they called it something else back then in the Church of England, like a bishop? I don't know. Anyway, he wasn't really into that for some reason. I don't know. I took a whole class on the history of the theory of evolution, 500 level. That's graduate level stuff. I used to know more about this. Anyway, he is sort of like, after college, he's kind of like, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be a pastor. What am I going to be? And he gets on this boat called the HMS Beagle, and he goes on a journey around the world and collects lots of samples of fossils and animals and all kinds of stuff. And then, probably while he's on that boat, he starts coming up with a theory of evolution. He's reading Lyell's big book about uniformitarianism. That's a big word. And he sees how Lyell is like slow and gradual processes, millions of years. He's also reading Paley. Okay, so he's heard the watchmaker argument. And he's also read Lamarck. He's heard about evolution. I think he had like an uncle or a grandpa that had actually also tried to propose a theory of evolution. So he's got all these ideas rattling around in his head. And he's trying to come up with a way, how can I explain that this would actually happen? Now this cartoon that we're watching is going to show how can you actually get a population to change. Now think back to the last lesson. I told you about fixity of species and I told you about Paley and how fixity of species, not the best idea. So all those creatures show up on the Galapagos and they do change, okay? You probably had a little tortoise show up and now it's a giant tortoise. But you know what? It's still a tortoise, okay? You probably had a regular iguana show up and now it's a marine iguana and a land iguana. You got two different things from the original. Okay? As creationists, we actually believe in evolution. Not that kind of evolution. Evolution's a real squishy word, okay? It can mean a lot of different things. If it means a change in populations over time, sure. If you think that you can get poodles and Labrador retrievers from wolves, that's kind of where it stops, you're a creationist, okay? But if you think you can go from a single cell to a basketball player, from a bacteria to a basketball player, now you're an evolutionist, big time. And so there's different levels of it, and some people say there's limits to change. So anyway, we don't have time to talk about all those things today, but Darwin comes up, here's his good idea, he comes up with a way that a population can change over time. Check out the cartoon. All right, here we go, natural selection. This is Darwin's good idea.
Trait mutations and modifications can appear. For example,
now, they just suggested that little guy mutated his little brown color. Wrong. God created variation inside of creatures that already exists. And occasionally, like my blue eyes, look at them, they're blue. They're probably actually a mutation that God didn't create, where there's something dysfunctional going on in there. But usually, and maybe not, maybe God created blue eyes, but usually the variations that we see that creatures have are probably built into the genes from God. Okay, maybe sometimes we got some variations like my gray hair or my male pattern baldness. Oh my gosh, he's bald! Bald! Those kind of variations are probably like baldness. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say being bald is a bad mutation that has come since man sinned in the garden. Okay, but for the most part, God created creatures with variation in their gene pools, and it's just come out over time. Okay, and so here's Darwin. This is just a hypothetical, and he's viewing these little bugs. And there's mom and dad, and they produced a brown moth. Okay, probably a recessive gene. And guess what? He is going to survive better in this environment because he's brown. So the birds can eat the yellow moths or the yellow butterflies or whatever, and then the brown ones are going to survive better. So in the next generation, more brown moths. Eventually, the whole population might be all brown moths. Okay, so this idea that those that are best suited to the environment survive and reproduce the most and produce more that look like them is called natural selection. And this is how you could get marine iguanas and land iguanas. This is how you could go from being a small tortoise to a big tortoise. Little small tortoise populations, over time, it actually helped them survive to be big tortoises, okay? And so Charles Darwin thought of some of these things, and he thought of a mechanism, a way that evolution could happen. And his mechanism is alive and well today. It was a good idea Darwin came up with, natural selection. So we go up here, and I've got a cute little picture of the same idea. You've got mice with multiple variations. The birds eat the mice they can see. Over time, you get a population that's mostly black mice, maybe eventually someday all black mice. Okay, this idea is called natural selection. So check this out, evolution, down here. Darwin didn't invent the idea of evolution. Lamarck had already thought of that. Other people had talked about it. What he is famous for is he came up with this idea, the way evolution could happen. It's called natural selection. Johnny, you do the best job of not writing all the letters in a straight line. Thanks for noticing. Now, natural selection is a great idea, but it's actually limited because it can only get you so far. You can take dogs, you can take wolves, and you can make all the different kinds of dogs with wolves. That's what creationists think today, but they're all still dogs. And so creationists say there's limits to evolution. Okay? Darwin, on the other hand, he didn't know anything about genetics. And so he's like, I think we can go from a bacteria to a basketball player. Yeah! And so Darwin didn't stop at natural selection. Darwin could have been the most awesome Christian. He could have been like, I think Pele's wrong about fixity of species. I think God built it into creatures to change their populations over time and adapt to new habitats. And God made species capable of adjusting to their environments. And he could have just been a rock star Christian biologist. But instead, he's like, and I want to turn away from God in my heart and not believe in him. And that's why we need to give Darwin 2 thumbs down. Look at Darwin's quote bubble. I gradually came to disbelieve in Christianity as a divine revelation. No, Darwin, you moron. Okay, we got Charlie Darwin over here, the father of the theory of evolution. Darwin. He finally publishes his first book, and it's called On the Origin of Species. Totally fit that in this space. So On the Origin of Species is his first book, and in it he argues for, wait for it, universal common ancestry. Bacteria to basketball players. So here's a picture that represents universal common ancestry. Oh man, I am off today. I got a couple of great videos we're gonna watch really fast speed to show universal common ancestry, the idea. All right, universal common ancestry, here we go. So humans have had a long history. I love this part. 3.8 million years in the making. Oh, that's how old life is on the planet. Oh, okay, must be true. It's in a video. From the primordial puddle to the modern day. Hey, red alert, primordial puddle. Maybe these people don't know everything they're talking about. Okay. Here's how humans evolved from the first life. I love how they just state it like it's a fact. If I'm a Christian and I say something like it's a fact, it's because I'm a Christian and I have faith in God and like there's this faith position that I have. But when you're a science person and you're a YouTube channel about science and you pretend that your faith is science, that is dishonest. Yeah, we're going fast. Okay, boom. First cell just magically appears. Perfect. Turns into a bacteria. Okay. Turns into photosynthetic bacteria. Turns into a cell with lots of organelles. There's quite a story behind that, but I don't have time to tell you about it. Okay, and now we're a protist. Oh, tons of protists. Flatworm. Your ancestors were flatworms. Pika. I don't know what that means. Okay, and Pika-aya. And all these words, these are all transitional species. Oh, look at that cute little guy. Oh, he's such a cute little ancestor. That's a great grandpa. If you're an evolutionist, you believe this is your great grandpa. Okay, and with some more greats in there. Now, there's a couple of these I actually want to talk about. One of them is coelacanth. Okay, here we go. After Darwin publishes his book, he creates a ton of followers. Okay, so like a lot of Christians push back. A lot of Christians embrace Darwin. And they're like, yeah, evolution and Christianity. Let's go. And there's still lots of Christians like that today. Scientists are going after it, and they find this fossil called coelacanth, and it's got these funny lobed fins. Like, oh, they kind of look like bones. Like maybe it walked in the swamps, and it like kind of maybe got on the land once in a while. It was sort of like a half fish, half animal on land, what's called a tetrapod. And so, yeah, that's what the coelacanth was. And then, spoiler alert, 1938, they find these things living still alive. Now, another interesting thing about how reliable is the fossil record, this is called a living fossil. It's never been found above 66 million years old in the fossil record. So it's called a living fossil because they thought it was extinct. Oh, it turns out it's still alive. And guess what? It doesn't live in little puddles. and kind of go on land once in a while, it lives like 500 feet under the water. So based on their interpretations of its fins, they thought, oh yeah, it must walk around on the land. No, it doesn't walk around on its fins, it swims. It's a fish. And this is kind of like why, with the inference cube, you don't always know your inferences, whether they're really right or not, till you get to actually observe them. Sorry, back to the video. But yes, coelacanth was right next to one of our walking fish ancestors. Okay, next up is Tiktaalik. He replaced coelacanth. And then we have Ichthyostega and Acanthostega and some other weird things they found in the fossils that must, boom. And then we become amphibians, okay, our ancestors. And then our ancestors became reptiles. And then they became furry little mammals. That was a quick jump. And then they became walking primates, climbing primates. Wait for it, wait for it. We're gonna see, okay, we're still basically chimps, and then all of a sudden, bam, we're upright. Australopithecus. Now, don't get me wrong, the people who do this stuff are very good scientists. Like, they are very smart, and they know what they're looking at. You could probably hand them a bone, and they'll tell you what it's from. But this is what they're working with, okay? Look at the skeleton. You got a few bones from the head. You got a lot of ribs. You got some vertebrae. Got some long arms. You got a sacrum, okay? That's the bottom part of your spine or the start of your pelvis. You got half of a pelvis, okay? You got a femur, okay? Upper leg bone. You got a part of a tibia. You got some bones. But let's zoom out again. That's what you're working with. And from this, you can make some really creative pictures like this. There is still debate in the scientific community as to whether this thing could even walk upright, or chose to walk upright. My dog can walk upright. And it has these really long arms, so they're like, yeah, I think this thing just was in the trees mostly, guys. But if you really want to believe something, you can kind of push it too. But that's why you're not so much doing science anymore, you're doing more of a philosophy. Okay, and then we get to Homo erectus, which all the teenage boys laugh at. And Homo erectus, according to the creationists, which, that's a real thing, but they just draw a monkey body on a man. Okay, Homo erectus skeletons are humans. And then Homo sapiens, not Homo sapiens, we're Homo sapiens. Neanderthals, guess what? Those are humans too. They bred with humans. I go to church with some people who kind of look like Neanderthals. I definitely work with some teenagers who act like Neanderthals. Okay, and then we get to Homo sapiens. They still look like monkeys. That's one view of the story. Now notice in the whole thing, you see this blue line in the background, okay? Now I've got one more video that shows the same kind of thing. Okay, so I got this next video. It's just to show you, I'm not even gonna play the audio. It's just to show you like, where are these lines going in the last diagram? Or in the last video. So look, the lines go to different things. Oh, that evolves into a fish, and each break in the line's like a different population in this idea. Oh, you get dogs. Okay, it breaks off into dinosaurs. Dinosaurs probably should run into birds at some point because that's what they believe, okay? Oh, bald eagles, of course. And then now we're into something like Acanthostega like before and all these lobed fin things. And then, oh, boom, whales, there they are. Okay, and finally, chimps, humans. Ah, there's you in your cool clothes. And then zoom out and look what we're dealing with. It makes a tree. How everything is thought to evolve makes a tree. That's what this diagram represents. And so here's your bacteria, okay? And right here, the abbreviation for basketball is BXB. Here's your BXB player, all right? So this is where Darwin just walks away from God. Darwin says, I don't just think populations change and adapt to new environments and like kind of form new ecological niches. Like that would be a great movement of the Holy Spirit working through Darwin to improve biology. But instead, Darwin's like, I think that all life just evolved from a bacteria over millions of years. Why, Darwin? Why did your heart want to go that direction? That's sad, okay? And that's where he's at. And so he writes a book about that. Then he writes a second book. He left the question of what about man for his second book, The Descent of Man. And it proposed human evolution. Bro, why would you turn away? Okay, last couple words that we need to add to the notes. All right, Darwin's other big idea that all living things evolved from one single common ancestor is called universal common ancestry. And the number of years ago when most scientists claim life first appeared on the earth? 3.5 to 4.0 billion years ago. So what a letdown these two guys are. The first 4.5 lessons, all these guys were like, God, 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 God. The beginning of science is a work of God. Like Christian men started science, okay? Not that there aren't some other people who probably deserve some credit for sure, but it was a work of God when science got started. Lamarck, last lesson, and especially Lyell and Darwin, this lesson, it's just starting to, okay? They are just killing things, man. It's really important when you're not doing experiments. What is guiding your heart? Is it your love for God or is it something else? If it's anything but a love for God that is causing you to do your science, that is a part of your life every day, you're gonna end up in the wrong place. There's 1,000 ways, there's 1,000 degrees, there's 365, no wait, what? That's days in a year. There's 360 degrees in a circle. There's 1 degree of following Jesus, the straight and narrow. That means there are 359 wrong directions by 1 degree to go. Love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your strength. Jesus said that's the greatest commandment. I guarantee you, if Lyell and Darwin had loved God with their hearts and their minds, they would have come to different conclusions. Because this isn't a science that's driven by the evidence. This is a science that's driven by what you want. 1 hour and 38 minutes. I've got some editing to do. We're gonna have to cut this one down. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.